Turn then to question 14. They call the Honourable Member for Douglas Central, Mr Thomas.
Speaker, I beg leave to ask the Chief Minister how much he expects will be raised from the proposed Community Infrastructure Levy and when he expects this first to be levied.
Call the Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The amount of revenue that will be raised from a Community Infrastructure Levy is directly related to the charging schedule that will need to be informed by stakeholder engagement and public consultation. A draft charging schedule is currently being worked on, and the draft charges are currently £50 per square metre for residential development and £150 per square metre for employment. These figures are likely to change substantially following stakeholder engagement and public consultation. This engagement and consultation will be a vital part of the process in determining how the charges would impact the viability of development and indeed to establish what uses, land designations and specific locations should fall within the charging schedule. Utilising the aforementioned figures, the expected revenue for the sites within the area plan for East would be approximately £49 million. Again, this is an indicative estimate and will be subject to adjustment based on future discussions and progression through the legislative drafting stages.
Question, Mr Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and to the Chief Minister for that helpful answer. When does the Chief Minister expect the stakeholder engagement or the consultation to commence? And when does the Chief Minister expect the regulations that need to be made once the appointed day order has been made for this part of this clause in the Town and Country Planning Act will come before Tynwald? And finally, when does the Chief Minister actually expect that the Community Infrastructure Levy will actually be in operation and be levied?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The first part, first I think it was who would be consulted on this, if my memory serves me correct, and in drawing up those draft regulations, Cabinet Office will carry out stakeholder engagements early in 2021, which may include such groups as the Isle of Man Construction Forum and the Planning User Group. Public consultation will be undertaken on the draft regulations and any associated charging schedules and supporting policy documents by April 2021.
Supplementary question, Dr Allinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Chief Minister agree with me that it's very important that expectations are measured in terms of the long-term benefits of the Community Infrastructure Levy, and that the construction industry should not be seen as a golden goose, because we know how that fable ended up? Thank you.
Chief Minister to reply.
Yes, indeed, though. It would be nice to have a golden goose at this moment with the finances with COVID. Yes, it's important that we ensure we have a fair and equitable. There's no point coming up with such a high rate that we put off business going ahead on the Isle of Man, but equally there is a fee there to help with our levy, to help other areas of island society, and that's why we are going out for consultation and would have that hope to have the proposals drawn up by April 2021. And I think that's actually in the motion is at point 3D, requires a proposal for the Community Infrastructure Levy to be introduced by 2021. Obviously we'll do it as quickly as we can, but we must go out for consultation with the relevant parties.
Question, Mr Shimmons.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Chief Minister agree with me that it's very important that there, rather than a one consistent levy right across, a simple levy, it'd be better to have a differentiated levy between greenfield sites and brownfield sites, which by their nature are much more expensive to develop anyway. And noting my honourable friend Dr Allison's comments about gooses, that consulting the construction sector is important, but turkeys tend not to vote for Christmas.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, unless they get a presidential pardon, that is. That said, yes, I totally agree with the honourable member for Middle on the fact that when we have this consultation, we should be looking to see what can we do to help brownfield site development. And that's the whole point of having stakeholder engagement and public consultation. And I personally look forward to seeing these proposals coming back by April 2021, where it has been agreed that there will be an element of support to help maybe develop some sites that we would all like to see developed, with an element of support from the general pot, for want of a better word, the levy. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Ms Edge.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Just like to ask the Chief Minister, obviously he's put some figures out there, £50 for residential, 150 for employment. I'm just wondering, prior to going out to consultation, what professional advice has been received to be able to go out for consultation on some of the facts on the charging schedule? Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've been given it from my planning experts in the Department of our policy team on planning. I'm sure they will have reviewed what else is going in other jurisdictions and Wales, for example, England, but I will get the exact detail to all honourable members because I haven't got it here.
Final supplementary, Mr Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Does the Chief Minister agree with me that that figure to be raised in the East of 49 million is shockingly large, especially as 2/3 of it comes from employment land, especially given that only 1.7 million was raised from Section 13 affordable housing agreement since 2012? Secondly, does the Chief Minister agree with me there's now some confusion about the commitment for April 2021 because the resolution in Tynwald for the area plan for the East was merely for a proposal for SIL to be introduced by April 2021, whereas the answer to my question just before that was that SIL would be brought into operation by April 2021. And the regulations that are envisaged in the legislation I took through actually talk about consultation on the specific regulations. So will the Chief Minister outline exactly how there is time between now and April 2021 for the proposals to be worked up, then for the regulations to be drafted, then the regulations to be put out to consultation and to put it into force by April 2021, which is government's commitment?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think the legislation states that we have to have the proposals ready for April 2020 or to be debated on. It may take longer to get it up and running. I don't think there's any point saying we're going to have it done in a 4 or 5 month period or 4 month period. So it could well be July, August before the actual scheme. Shocking, says the Minister who was in charge of it for over 4 years, who should have, if this was going to be done, should have had it ready himself rather than trying to pass the buck on a new Minister who's just taken over. But obviously we will be moving as fast as possible because it's in everyone's interest to make sure we have this ready, this levy, ready to go. But the legislation says that requires a proposal. If the motion says it requires a proposal.
Order, Mr Thomas, please. The Chief Minister has the floor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm just reading out from the legislation. The Honourable Member likes his facts and figures from legislation. The motion says at point 3D, excuse me, Mr.
Order.
Requires a proposal for Community Infrastructure Levy to be introduced by April 2021. It's a proposal. You drafted it. You worked on it, Honourable Member.
Excuse me, Chief Minister. Mr Thomas, if you are going to persist in heckling the Chief Minister while he tries to answer, I will ask you to leave the chamber. Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I said, if the Honourable Member has a different understanding of the legislation, I haven't drafted the legislation, I'm reading out that point 3D requires a proposal for Community Infrastructure Levy to be introduced by April 2021. But obviously we are working to bring in a levy as soon as possible following analysis of representations. Once Section 13A is brought into the Town and Country Planning Act 1999 and the regulations are approved by Tynwald, the charge can be levied.